guys want to give me a brief rundown of what it is we're playing and how this came about?
Oh yeah. We're just it's just no frills. The deck is called Eldrazi Stompy. It's very, very straightforward. It's got a lot of the elements like the old Stompy decks used to. You have Churnosphere, Chalice, Wasteland, and your Soul Land effects. It's just with the recent printings in whatever Battle for Zendikar, whatever set we're on now.
And Oath of
Oath of the Gatewatch. They printed a boatload of new Eldrazi's, which give you even more Soul Lands. So everything in the deck now is either a Super Accelerant, a Soul Land, or a spell. Cavern makes all your stuff uncounterable. Wasteland mana constricts them, so it's easy to actually catch your opponents under your Churnosphere, having to not be able to cast any spells.
Yes.
Wow.
Incorrect.
Yeah, they're coming. They've all the foil cards for this deck have been purchased.
It's very macabre better than
So TCG player, keep those prices going up.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, yeah.
And it's free, so it can't be counterspelled.
And it can it be ciphered?
It can be ciphered, but you have Chalice.
Yeah.
So the deck has a lot of 4-ups for consistency. The mana base is, I think, the simplest thing about it. You have Orborg, which works very well with Eye of Ugin.
Now, how exactly do these guys work together?
So
I've seen it before, but
this Eye of Ugin reduces the cost of Eldrazi spells and creatures by 2. So if you play this on first turn, you can play however many mimics you have in your opening hand and just dump it out. Orborg makes Eye a swamp, so now you can tap it for mana. So on turn 2 you can have 4 mana. You just can't cast Thought Not Seer with that.
Right.
4 mana.
Yeah.
Because they both produce black. You still need the colorless aspect of it. Seed of Traders is fantastic, and it arguably should be a 4-up. I mean, it really is good, but you get weird, awkward hands when you have an opening hand of 2, and it's hard to. I mean, you want to make all your land drops. And then 4 Ancient Tombs, 4 Eldrazi Temple, 4 Cavern of Souls, which just makes all the counterspells irrelevant, and then 4 Wasteland for matchups like lands and the Delver decks. You have let's start.
Eldrazi Temple is just like another soul land in this deck, essentially.
It legitimately, it is a soul land for creatures only. Oh no, it also does it for spells too, if you have Eldrazi spells.
If they're Eldrazi spells, which we used to.
Yeah.
But one of...
So, I guess we'll go to the creature base next.
Yep. Actually, let's go to the Disruption first.
We'll do Disruption.
Yeah. You said Stompy, so
right.
Got me a little excited.
Yeah.
Let's go through the Stompy.
So we start with 4 Chalice of the Void. Obviously, Chalice of the Void for 1 is what we're always going to try to do. There are certain matchups where you might want to do Chalice for 0. The Storm matchup, for instance. But I mean, if you Chalice for 1, that tends to take them down too. Churnosphere is fantastic against the Delver decks and the Storm decks. Warping Whale is Eldrazi Command, really. You get 3 really powerful effects. The first is exile target creature with power or toughness 1 or less. And if you look at the format, that's like almost all the first turn drops that you really want to deal with. It also deals with opposing Revokers on your equipment.
Yeah, I saw you working well. That was pretty awesome. I also like that you can use like Thought Not Seer to like attack their hand after they go hit it.
Right.
Like,
Absolutely.
It seemed very good.
It's very good.
I didn't know that was before.
It's one of the best cards in the deck.
It's been really, really good.
Counter
as Mike was
sorcery,
saying,
is very strong. Counter Show and Tell is one of our big ones.
It also hits Terminus, so against Miracles, in conjunction with Sphere and Chalice, if you have any combination of your major disruption elements, if they go to flip top and Terminus, 9 times out of 10 they can't cast more than 1 spell for the turn.
Right.
So this becomes hard counter when they can't force a will back, which is insane in that matchup.
It really is.
It hits every tutor in your combo deck, Past in Flames. It hits Hand Disruption. It is literally Eldrazi Command. I think it would have been too powerful if they would have made it tribal Eldrazi. It would have been too powerful, I think.
Do you ever use
It would have been great.
Do you ever like make a dude?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
You can ramp up to Reality Smasher or Endbringer, you know, depending on what you need. And then honestly, the dudes hold equipment.
Yeah.
So we have Jitty and we have Sword of Fire and Ice. Jitty's a legendary, so as great as it is, you never want to draw two. So that's why there's only one. And then Sword of Fire and Ice is just a little too it's expensive, but it gets around like True Nemesis and gives itself protection from Jace bounce and protection from Punishing Fire. Right. So those are some of the more difficult decks. We have a one-of Phyrexian Metamorph, which is fantastic. He can copy any of these creatures. So Matter Reshaper.
Because it's artifact or creature.
Right. Thought-Knot Seer, Reality Smasher, or Endbringer. So if we have any of these out, he's just another copy of those. And then he can copy opposing creatures like Termaggoyf. And
Stoneforge Mystic is another good one to copy when you're playing against Blade decks.
yeah.
Oh wow.
You can tutor out your own equipment.
Yeah, he's also kind of good in the show and tell matchup. If they show and tell out a 15-15, then on your turn you can cast him potentially uncounterable, and then
You get the cast trigger for Emrakul, so you take the extra
so
turn.
we'll get the cast trigger, so we'll get to attack. We'll get the time walk.
It's definitely worth noting that you can't put these into play on show and tell and get whatever they
Right, because
Yeah.
they see each other separately.
Yeah.
They come in at the same
Now,
time and don't see each other.
interestingly, if they do cast show and tell and you have Endbringer, then that's fantastic because his second ability,
I know a lot of sneaky show players that are complaining about this card right now.
Yeah, so his second ability, if you guys don't know, is target creature can't attack or block this turn. So if they show and tell, he'll be haste. You can ping on your turn, right? Or draw a card. He'll untap on their turn, and then you can prevent them from attacking with their 15-15. So it's very like Endbringer can't, like they can't win with just the show and tell. And then against sneak attack decks, we've got 4 Revokers. So we're very well accomplished against the combo. We're a creature deck that can have all the disruption that can beat the combo decks. And then a lot of the Delver decks, like the cheat on mana, have lots of threat stacks. And then our creatures are really big, so even against the fair decks, we have game against that.
Yeah, I've seen this deck just rip fair guys.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's really good too because, also going back to the mana bases, against the fair decks, they're either super tempo oriented or they want to hit like a critical mass to where they can set up tricks, say like Death and Taxes, to where they can use like Mother of Runes for protection, which against this does 0. And where you get these super fast hands where you can dump more power than they can as fast as they can because of things like Eye. Like if you have Eye opening up into multiple mimics, multiple endless ones, and then untapping onto turn 2 with like Thought-Knot Seers, and you can just smash. Like the deck, it takes a very, very, very specific 9 cards to do it, but unabated, the deck can kill on turn 2. Yeah. Like, it's insane the actual power level this deck can put out. Like, it's been very, very solid. We've been working on this thing for a couple of weeks
2
now.
weeks. Really,
And
just after it was spoiled. The full set was spoiled.
It's been the most fun I've had playing Legacy.
What do we have for what?
So basically, let's start with the sideboard here. We'll just run through it real quick. Yeah. We have 6 pieces of Grave Hate. The lands matchup can be kind of rough. Reanimator is kind of rough. And Dredge can be to an extent if they get a very fast start. So we have 2 Tormod's Crypts, 4 Fairy Macabre, which we'll get into why those numbers and what the cards are in a minute. 1 Endbringer, which has been really good against like the show and tell matchups, as you were saying earlier. Like they show and tell and untap, it's really good. Needle looks a little out of place here. We'll get back to that one too. Ratchet Bomb is good against any kind of general swarm strategies, Delvers, Death and Taxes, basically any fair deck that we're siding out things like Chalice against that aren't really great. Same thing with Spatial Contortion and Dismember. They're really, really good against the fair decks. As the unfair decks, we have extremely good matchups game 1, and then game 2 we get to decide on what kind of hate that we want to go over with. Which, speaking of those unfair matchups, against lands and Reanimator, we side pretty similarly, which is we're going to be bringing in the 4 Fairy Macabres and the 2 Tormod's Crypts. And the reason that it's 4 and 2 instead of things like Surgical Extraction or Crypt or Spellbomb or what's the Relic? Yeah, Relic is because of Chalice. Chalice stays in all those matchups. Fairy Macabre is free. It can't be countered from Reanimator. They can stifle it, but they generally don't run stifle. And a lot of times they don't see it coming because most Reanimator lists right now are on Abrupt Decay as compared to Chain of Vapor and Needle. They're splashing a little bit of green because it's better against Rest in Peace, and they're not so much on the show and tell play. So Crypt in play, they can Abrupt Decay. Fairies instant speed. A lot of times they don't see it coming. The same thing against lands, because we have things like Warping Whale and Fairy. We can remove their targets in response to Whale, or in response to Loam, or Whale it and then instant speed remove it in the same turn, while still keeping mana up to play creatures and having Whale and other pieces up for, say, like Endbringer to activate and things like that. So it's a complete tempo thing, and because it can't be countered and it doesn't interfere with our chalices.
What's this card here? I'm having a hard time seeing.
Spatial Contortion is a brand new card. It's basically nameless inversion for Eldrazi. It's 1 and a colorless targeted creature gets +1, -3. This guy gets brought in most of your Delver matchups. It's cheap, it kills Delver, Pyromancer, Deathrite, it kills all of your utility creatures. It's amazing against Death and Taxes. Mother of Runes can't do anything about the protection because it's colorless, which is a big thing, having it be colorless.
You can also use it to pump either Thought Not Seer, Reality Smasher, or Endbringer. It can be
the extra 1 point. I guess.
no
Right.
3.
It's extra
plus
3.
3 minus 3.
Plus- yeah.
So it's nameless inversion.
Okay.
Colorless.
Right, so you can use it aggressively
I see.
too,
Yeah.
as in defensively.
We would have 3 Dismembers, but we just believe the life loss with
Yeah.
Ancient Tomb and our one of Phyrexian Metamorph is a little too much to support 3.
Yeah. Most of the time, your Dismembers are also coming in against the same matchups, mainly to hit the bigger things. So Goyf can be a problem for this deck sometimes. Generally, the only thing that'll get bigger. Angler, yes. Angler's a little bit harder to cast for them. Generally, we're quicker than Angler. The thing that was Goyf comes out on turn 2 religiously, like every time turn 2, and unless we have a fast start of like Mimic into Thought Knot into Smasher, Goyf gets big really quick. So the only maybe 2 to 3 cards in the deck that can actually handle the Goyf main deck is going to be an Endbringer, which will stop it from attacking, stop it from blocking, or generally can trade or kill with it in combat. Reality Smasher being 5 toughness, Goyfs very rarely get above 5, but with us having artifacts in this list in the main, Goyf sometimes does get to be a 5/6 and we have trouble killing it. Other than that, Endless Wind on the back end, if we make him really, really huge, should block and kill a Goyf, but if we're making a very large Endless Wind fast, that means Mimic speeding him in the face and Goyf's going to be relegated to blocking duty, so we're fine there. But when they get to side out their dead cards like Force of Wills, Dazes, and things like that, while we have Cavern, it can be real tough and grind when they're bolting and killing our small dudes. Goyf will go the distance late in the game, so we have to have a cheap removal spell for it. And he's just an all-star.
What's nice is we have Orberg, so sometimes we don't have to pay the life.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Right, which is
Yeah.
another plus.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
It's free sometimes. Ratchet Bomb also falls in the same category against the fair decks. He's great against Death and Taxes. One of the biggest reasons he's in here is against Elves. Elves can be somewhat problematic as they can do very, very fast starts. As to where Chalice of the Void's very good. They do run Abrupt Decay and generally run Thoughtseize and or Cabal Therapy in the sideboard. So you kind of have to overload on hate for that. So one of these guys will resolve. With this set at 1, they have a hard time going off because they have to bait you into hitting it. And with you having Warping Whale and GT, Spatial Contortion, Dismember, you can pick and choose when you actually want to blow your bomb and make it the most effective. So I mean, most of the board is set up for that. It's against the fair decks. Needle looks like the odd man out because of Chalice.
Right, I was just gonna say.
Right. The only time that Needle is coming in, it's generally only coming in for 3 matchups, and that's Death and Taxes, the Sneak Attack matchup, and Lands. Which seems kind of odd, but
Bring it against Miracles?
not against Miracles, because you have Chalice is very, very good against Miracles. Most of the lists right now are on Motto Ponder. They're on the European, we like to call it the Anurag build. Hey, buddy. So they usually max out on Ponders, max out on Swords, max out on Snapcasters. They're very, very, very low to the ground. So Chalice does extra work against them because they only have Force of Will generally on turn 1. Because if they're on the play, either they're really good and they're keeping up Spell Pierce. No offense, Miracle players, most of you guys are kind of terrible. That's why you always draw. Unless they're super great Miracle players, they're gonna tap out a lot. So you just want to jam Chalice as fast as you can against them. Needle really only hits that. I mean, it hits Jace, but it's not super great. You have Quad Revoker. Also, under Churnosphere with Wasteland Lot, they have a hard time casting multiple spells in one turn.
Yeah.
So you generally lock them out pretty quickly.
4 Revoker with 4 Cavern Souls.
Yes.
Like, you definitely have some game against them.
It's really good. But the reason that Needle is in here is even though it does completely contradict with Chalice of the Void, you kind of have to have it for lands. Lands also generally brings in Quad Crows and Grip because they're going to see Chalice, they're going to see Revoker, and they're going to see Churnosphere. So it can slow them down to a crawl long enough for you to kill them. So they're going to bring in Grips. So a lot of times you'll have Chalice on one in turn 1 or 2 to slow them down. They're going to grip it. You then get to drop Needle on stage or what's basically affecting you from killing them. Or you have the Golden Hand where you go Needle turn 1, untap, play a dude, Chalice at 1 turn 2, and it makes it very hard because you can put a quick clock on it for them. So it's kind of instrumental. Sneak Attack's another thing to where you kind of need it because they do run Pyroclasm. If they're savvy players, they're going to bring in the Pyroclasm and or Wipe Away, so you need more answers for your Sneak Attack. We have Endbringers in that matchup to go up to 3 against them, so we have them covered. If they Sneak Attack in any dude and we put an Endbringer, if it's not Sneak Attack, we untap and take over the game because they can't attack or block at that point. And like I said, we just get we just get to win the game. The Death and Taxes matchup, I'm gonna let Mike go to this. This was actually his brainchild on how to sideboard with it. I played the matchup and butchered it the first 2 times. Mike's clarified that we haven't lost to it yet now with this new sideboard strategy against them.
Yeah, so the Death and Taxes matchup, you're going to bring in Dismember, Spatial Contortion, Ratchet Bomb, and Pithy Needle. So that's 8 cards. And then you're going to side out Trinisphere, because it's kind of useless.
Yeah, especially with, so from my experience playing Stompy, they have Stoneforge Mystic, which like they just go turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, you go turn 2 Trinisphere, and they go, okay, cool, free spells still.
Yeah, so that's 3. The next card you side out is Chalice of the Void, and like you're like, why Chalice of the Void? You know,
well, speaking from experience, also their only one drop that's relevant is
Source of Plowshare, right? So it's terrible, right?
Right.
So you side out these really terrible cards, and then you side out one Endbringer because it's so expensive, and then you bring in all this removal. Ratchet Bomb's really good against the Batterskull. You can kill the token with it, and Pithing Needle stops Rashid and Port, Wasteland, and any of their equipment. Although you got to be careful, you don't want to name Jitty because Jitty's really good for you. Like you're like, why don't I side out Mimic? Because like Mimic is so big and so fast that like they only have so much removal. So if I cast any of my other guys, like you're putting a ton of pressure on them very, very early.
Yeah, it's one thing I just noticed that's really good is this deck essentially just defeats Mother Runes. Like,
Mother Runes.
They can't like protection from a color. Like cool story. Like there's no colors. Like seriously, the only relevant spell I guess would be Dismember.
Even Phyrexian Metamorph like becomes the colorless
it's
creature.
like all right, that's cool. So, jeez.
I definitely kind of shit the bed the first couple times playing it. Where I've been a legacy player for so long, it's just like Death and Taxes 1-drops are so good. And the big power of their 1-drop is Mother of Runes, which in this list
it just
does nothing. Occasionally it might stop a Dismember, but you know what? Like, cool story, Mom.
I almost think if I'm Death and Taxes, I would almost want to board that card out.
Right, and most people do.
There's no reason to keep Mother Runes in against us.
Wow. That is super impressive.
This deck is very insane.
It's pretty well-rounded. You pretty much board for Infect a lot of the same way too. You bring in Dismember, Contortion, Ratchet. We're still kind of up in the air about some matchups, but so far it seems to be good. It's winning a lot. There's a lot of play to it. Sequencing is very, very difficult sometimes. It almost plays like a mix between shops and vintage with your lock pieces.
This really,
an aggro deck.
What do you start with?
I'm a shops player at heart. I've top 8'd vintage champs with shops, and I've done very well with shops. And when the Oath list was with Oath of the Gatewatch was spoiled, and we started putting the deck together, I was like, look, this is the deck that shops players want in Legacy. The mud deck is not even close.
It's the mud deck.
Yeah, this is much more akin to how shops plays in.
You get a workshop in
Yeah, you basically you have Eldrazi Workshop.
This is a workshop.
That's a workshop.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Oh, this looks so cool.
So, going forward, how long have you been playing this deck?
About 2 weeks.
And
A little over 2 weeks.
Are there any other changes you wanna make? Any cards you're playing with?
This card's terrible. I suspect it's either going to be the 4th City of Traders, or maybe another Metamorph, or something. Like, we just haven't quite figured out what it's going to be, and that's why it's been Matter Reshaper, because it's, it is what it is. It's a 3/2.
It's a little mid-range.
But he's so underwhelming. He only pumps Mimic 1, right? And
sometimes you just hit Chalice.
He's still value is the thing why he's still on the list.
Yeah, and if they swords him, your ability's useless. He's just a 3 for 3/2. I mean, he's kind of interesting in some with Eye in play. Like, you can sometimes get him down for 1 mana. So him being cheap is relevant. But there's just so many more powerful things that we could be doing with that particular slot that I suspect he'll end up leaving within the next week or two, leaving the deck. The sideboard has come a long way since we first put it together. I'm really happy with where it is right now. There's a couple matchups that we really haven't play tested against, Elves being one of them. So we don't know how important that matchup really is. But yeah, I think that this deck is great. It's a lot of fun, and you guys should try it.
Yeah, it's really cool. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Definitely the best aspect of the deck, besides it being good. Dude, this deck is a blast to play.
We're both 3-0 now.
This is so much fun to
Quick
play.
question: what are your usual cuts for for what? Like, I guess if you're let's say you're playing against a combo deck, what? I guess you leave your tax.
So your expensive stuff. So against Storm, like, how good is Reality Smasher really? Like, it doesn't do anything.
Right.
Your equipment's not very good against the Storm deck, right? So you've got 2-4 cards. It just depends on which combo deck you're trying to attack. Reanimator, again, like, your expensive stuff. You can kill Reanimator with any of your small stuff. And look, Endless One scales, so he's really one of the best cards in the deck. Like, I've cast Endless One for as an 11/11 before.
Yeah,
I mean, he's insane.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'd really like the synergy between him and
Mimic.
Yeah. I just think that's really cool.
And what's great, we had one game against Lands where we had an Eye in play. I had triple Mimic and an Endless One. Right? So sometimes you're just like, do I wait till next turn? Well, he could just Wasteland Mate. So you just put 8 power worth of creatures in play all at once. Right? You can cast him as a 2/2. I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable way to use him. Putting the pressure down early is very important against the Lands deck, because they can just combo you out.
Now, I remember when this card got spoiled, a lot of people were trying Phyrexian Dreadnought. To try to make a
we talked about it, but like, you have to run colors, right, to like make Dreadnought work.
Right.
And you're like, well, just
colors are OP, or they're
colors.
We don't need them.
Get them out of here.
Who needs colors? We have brown. That's our color.
I haven't played colors in years.
Yeah.
Calm down, Evercore. Calm down.
No, this is really neat. So, any other potential changes you see going forward?
One thing we've been talking about, we've kind of tossing the idea around. It's still kind of untested. Is we were talking about this. This is our legacy shops build. Is we don't have our Mistress Factories in here. We don't have our manlands in here. It's still kind of up in the air, kind of still up for discussion and talking.
Yeah, so Manlands was another, especially with the Pro Tour, you see Blinkmoth Nexus and Mutavault in the modern versions of this deck. And you have to ask yourself, do Manlands have a place here? And we don't know the answer to that question yet. I suspect
It
that...
seems like it's kind of tough to warrant, given the mana base already.
Yeah, so the question is like, is 4 cities too much? There is 3 eyes too much, right? There are slots in which you can get 2 to 3 like Mishra's Factory in the deck, if you so chose. So
That's really cool.
Yep.
All right. So I had a question. I totally don't remember it, but the deck looks awesome. Thanks for sharing it with us, you guys. Really looking forward to seeing where this goes. I might have to throw something like this together because this is like right in my vein of a Stompy deck that's just like wrecks the format. Oh,
Try
I
it out,
remember a
man.
question.
Try it out.
What matchups do you want, and what matchups are you trying to avoid?
So we want Storm.
Yeah,
We want
that
Show
seems
and
pretty
Tell.
good. Also pretty good.
We want
The Miracles,
Delver.
yeah.
Anything with Delver of Secrets in it is like it's a buy.
Grixis
and-
Delver's very good. Bug Delver's been decent. They're a little...
Yeah, Abrupt Decay.
Abrupt Decay is not that... I mean, it's a factor in this, but
Yeah,
it's
it
not
hits
that big.
Endless One and Mimic.
Right. Rug
And-
Delver is probably the least of the Delver decks you want to face up against, just because they have Goyf along with Grudge, and they're usually they're more resilient.
I mean, if you can get Chalice for 1 against them,
Well,
they're
that's the
kind
thing
of
is the bug decks out of all the decks can break out of the Chalice
Yeah.
lock the easiest.
Yeah, they can.
Is what I've...
So to answer your question, decks that we don't want to see, Shardless Bug is probably the one deck that is very tough for us to deal with. And then Jund, although we haven't tested that matchup, but we suspect that's not good for us. So maybe the sideboard needs to be tweaked in order to deal with those decks. But there are a lot of decks in Legacy. I mean, a lot of decks in Legacy. And this deck has game against almost all of them. So we think it's a real contender, and I personally think Oath of the Gatewatch has been one of the strongest sets that we've had.
I mean, you look at the creature package, it looks like
1,
almost
2,
everything
3.
is from Oath.
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's all Oath. This is Battle.
Oh,
This
yeah,
is
that's
Oath
right.
too.
Well,
And this is Oath.
Zendikar in general.
Yeah, Zendikar. And then Zendikar gave us the lands, right?
Yeah.
I think this might actually be World Wake, but
Yeah,
It's the same,
it's
same
crazy.
block, same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks again very much for sharing it with us. I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on you guys because I might have to drink some of this fine Kool-Aid because I've been nothing but impressed with, like I said, I saw your performance at the 5K last Saturday. Was impressed.
I lost to lands and I lost to 4-color loam, and my
So that was one matchup I was curious about. How was the exact
So the problem was that my sideboard was just completely misbuilt. I had Lodestone Golems in my main deck. I had I just had 4 Crypts as my only graveyard removal. I didn't have Pithing Needle. I didn't have a 3rd Endbringer. Like, my sideboard was just misbuilt. So over the past week since that 5K, and even the next day, we did a lot of work on the sideboard, and this is our most latest build, and it's come a long way.
That's cool.
Do you still want to keep playing?
I'm just checking the chat real quick.
Oh, I literally have 1 star to save my extra deck. I would never have a fucking 1.
Yeah, no, we're good. All right, guys, thank you so much for
Thank
sharing
you.
with us. This deck is awesome. Really looking forward to seeing you guys' progress. Are you going to be taking this to the Open? And,
Coming to a top 8 near you?
coming
Yeah.
home with a trophy, maybe?
I hope so.
I hope so.
I definitely wouldn't mind putting another Star City trophy on the mantle up there.
Another one?